Well, free agency is coming, and there's one thing on every fan of the Pittsburgh Steelers' mind, and that is what are the Pittsburgh Steelers going to do with the quarterback situation that is happening here in Pittsburgh? There are a lot of predictions going into this season, and for some reason, FanDuel, DraftKings, and everybody else has us projected to get every freaking free agent quarterback. Now, I don't think we're going to get any of these guys, but I figured with all the connections to all of the different quarterbacks that we have, I figured I would make a list of the quarterbacks that we are linked to, the Pittsburgh Steelers, and kind of rank them from 8 to 1 on who I would like to see start out of these 8 guys. But this is just my opinion, and if you don't like it, I'd love to banter and argue with you in the comments about it, but hopefully you guys agree with me on some things, maybe some other things. We'll see. So, to start us off, one of the connections that we have, and I'm ranking him at 8th, to the potential starting quarterback position or within the quarterback depth chart for the Pittsburgh Steelers would be none other than New England Patriots' Mac Jones. Now, I do not think that Mac Jones is anywhere qualified to be a starter in the NFL. I mean, granted, he did play for the Patriots. Patriots don't have a lot of offensive weapons. I get that. But just by watching Mac Jones's film, I do not think that this guy could light up the Pittsburgh Steelers offense. I think that he is around the same level as Kenny Picket, and I know a lot of people don't want Kenny Picket to start, and by bringing in Mac Jones, you're pretty much just adding more fuel to the fire and going from what's that saying? Going from the pot into the frying pan or whatever. I don't think this is a good move at all. Considering Mac Jones went 10 touchdowns, 12 interceptions. He had 2,120 yards, which I know a lot of these stats are considerably better than Kenny Pickett, considering Kenny Pickett only threw like 6 touchdowns. But when it comes to Mac Jones, in his last game as like a starter against the New York Giants, I'm pretty sure he got pulled. And if he didn't, my goodness, this was atrocious. I'm not a big New England Patriots fan, so I don't follow them. So if you're a Patriots fan, you want to drop if he got pulled in this game. I don't personally remember. But against the Giants, he had 89 yards and 2 interceptions. I feel like that's definitely like a pull game. I feel like he definitely got pulled for Bailey Zappi. I mean, I don't entirely remember, but nonetheless, regardless of that situation, I don't think Mac Jones is that guy. And for him to be linked to the Pittsburgh Steelers is kind of insulting to me, just because Omar Khan, Mike Tomlin, the Rooneys, I know you guys want to win, but I don't think we're going to win with Mac Jones. And if you want somebody that's going to be better than Kenny Pickett or elevate Kenny Pickett, I don't think Mac Jones is going to be that elevation for Kenny Pickett or that competition for Kenny Pickett, whether Kenny Pickett starts or not. So, Mac Jones, I'm sorry, bud, but you're ranked number 8 on my Pittsburgh Steelers list. Now, going into number 7, which I don't think this is an impossible position for the situation to unfold, because this guy has some links to our current offensive coordinator, who we just signed, being Arthur Smith. This guy is none other than Desmond Ritter, who I have put at 7th. Now, I don't think Desmond Ritter is horrible, but I definitely don't think he is good. And the reason I don't think he's horrible is just because he has some potential, but he kind of reminds me of Jameis Winston in a way. Like, he has like a ton of yardage, but he throws a lot of interceptions. So I think he finished, looking at this, he had 12 interceptions and 12 touchdowns on the season, up and down all the way through. I mean, Atlanta went 7-10. It looked like this was over a course of 15 games. Looked like he missed a couple games in between there. But when it comes to Desmond Ritter, I just, once again, it's very similar situation to Mac Jones. I don't really think that this guy is going to elevate the Pittsburgh Steelers offense to what you want it to be, because as I said before, like, I don't think this guy's good. He could have some potential. He could have some upside. I mean, this is only his, 3rd season going in, because he got drafted in the same year as Kenny Pickett. But personally, I absolutely don't think that we should go for Desmond Ritter. Now, do I think we're probably going to bring him in? I wouldn't be surprised, just because Arthur Smith coached him down in Atlanta. And if Atlanta's looking for a new quarterback to draft with this heavy quarterback loaded draft class coming up, I wouldn't be surprised if we traded for him just to be like a quarterback number 2 or 3 or whatever. I don't think he'll start, but I personally wouldn't want to put him as a starter in any position. If that means, with Kenny Pickett getting injured a lot of times, I don't want Kenny Pickett to go down and then us having to deal with none other than Desmond Ritter. Now, do I think he's as bad as Mac Jones? No. Do I think that he is better than any of these other quarterbacks on the list? Absolutely not. And I'm not going to lie to you. Like I said, he has some potential, but his ceiling is very, very limited, in my personal opinion. I think that he is a certified backup, and I don't think that Desmond Ritter should be our starter. I think he is 7th on this list. I don't think we should go after him. But with his connections to Arthur Smith, I wouldn't be necessarily shocked. Now, number 6. Number 6 is none other than Russell Wilson. We have connections to Russell Wilson, and I get that he had a really good season in Denver this year. He threw 26 touchdowns and 8 interceptions. He looked like primetime Russ cooking out there. Well, not primetime Russ. I can't say that because primetime Russ was a different breed, but he did look pretty good considering what kind of season he had the year before, throwing only 16 touchdowns and the whole weird, oh, will he throw as many touchdowns as he has bathrooms in his house whole meme thing that was going on throughout the internet during last year's season. And I guess last year's season would technically be the season that just ended, but nonetheless, you know what I'm talking about. I'm talking about the 2022 season. But nonetheless, when it comes to Russell Wilson, look, I think he could be good here, but do I want him here? No. And I know this might be kind of annoying to some people, but hear me out here. Russell Wilson's getting up there in age, and I know there's going to be another guy on this list and a couple other guys on this list that have some age, but I feel like they have a little bit more upside with the team as a potential starter. I just don't see Russell Wilson, once again, elevating this team to being what they need to be. Maybe for a year or two, but just from what I saw last year and from all of this different information that came out over social media over the couple of years of him being toxic, just a whole different bunch of problems with Russ, I don't know. This guy gives me a little bit of weird vibes. And I know it sounds kind of weird to judge, based on that, but he kind of gives me a weird taste in my mouth. And hearing all this toxicity and all these like different things and people saying that he's not a good guy and he could be a locker room cancer, it doesn't really give me a lot of hope putting him in the locker room when we already have locker room problems. And maybe Russell Wilson's a really good guy. I don't know him personally, but based on what I've read and what I've seen and what I've heard, he might not be the best guy to bring this locker room together. And do I think it's likely that they bring him in as a Pittsburgh Steeler, as a starter over Kenny Pickett, over any of these other quarterbacks? I personally don't think so. And the reason is because I think Russell Wilson's going to want a lot of money. And that's another reason why I don't think we should bring him in as the quarterback, as the starting quarterback, because when it comes to Russell Wilson, he's probably going to want a lot of money, even though he's 35 years old. And we need to focus on the cap space for other positions when, for example, Cam Hayward is getting older. We're going to need to fill his position. There's going to be a lot of other positions coming up that we're going to have to fill. There's going to be wide receivers that we're going to have to let go. We're going to have to decide on Deontay Johnson. We're going to have to figure out the running back situation here. There's going to be a lot of cap room that we're going to have to move around. And I don't think paying a Russell Wilson-sized contract with him already being 35 and a little up and down is going to be that helpful. But he's definitely better than Mac Jones or Desmond Ritter. But based on everything that I mentioned, I don't think Russell Wilson should be the starter in Pittsburgh. That's why he's ranked 6th. Now, number 5, I put Ryan Tannehill. Now, I know a lot of people are going to say, well, Russell Wilson's better than Ryan Tannehill. Well, I get that. However, I think when it comes to Ryan Tannehill, I think that his contract would be a little bit lower than Russell Wilson's, considering Russell Wilson was the starter in Denver and Ryan Tannehill got benched for Will Levis. So I think Ryan Tannehill would probably take some sort of pay cut, and he probably could start. However, I don't think he is that good of a quarterback. I mean, I never really thought he was some dynamite GOAT quarterback. Even when Arthur Smith was his coordinator down in Tennessee, I thought he was really good, but I never thought of him as anything more than probably like a B+ quarterback. I mean, and I don't want to seem disrespectful, but I mean, I'm just saying, I think he's a good guy and I think he's a good player. But with his age and with him, already being 35, 36 years old, similar to Russell Wilson, I don't think you're going to have that much time with Ryan Tannehill to, build a team. I mean, maybe you could get another 10-7 season with Ryan Tannehill, but I don't think he's your answer. And I think he's a better option because, he has a little bit better mannerism than Russell Wilson from what people have been saying. I mean, obviously, I've talked about it with the toxicity and stuff. I think Russell Wilson's a little bit toxic from what we've heard, but I think that Ryan Tannehill would probably be a better option just based on salary cap, and the fact that he's connected to Arthur Smith makes him a little bit more of a likelier candidate to join the team. And as for starter material, I don't really see us improving that much more than what we already had this season. I mean, I think we might have a little bit more offensive movement, but I just am not that confident with a Ryan Tannehill starting quarterback situation. You guys are going to hate me for this one, considering I put two pretty decent quarterbacks in front of him, but I put Kenny Pickett at number 4. Kenny Pickett is definitely not the answer for the Pittsburgh Steelers. However, when it comes to a starting quarterback, instead of bringing in a Ryan Tannehill, a Russell Wilson, a Desmond Ritter, or a Mac Jones, you just stick it out with Kenny Pickett as the starter. And I know that might disappoint a lot of fans, but the problem is at that point, you might as well just draft somebody. Kenny Pickett's already under contract. He had a little bit of promise when we played against the Arizona Cardinals, and then he got hurt. Kenny Pickett is very injury prone, and yes, I don't think he is the starter. I don't think he will probably ever build up to that potential because maybe it had to do with the coordinators, the coaching, whatever it may have been. I don't know, nor do I care. I don't think Kenny Pickett is going to be a future starter for 5-10 years. I don't think he's our franchise guy. But when it comes to the situation that we're in, he does win games. And until we get that next quarterback developed, like maybe a young guy, whoever that next quarterback may be, I think Kenny Pickett would be ranked 4th on the potential starting list because at least, he kind of already understands the system. And I think that he wouldn't already have that heavy contract. You wouldn't have to bring in a Russell Wilson and pay him a lot of money. You wouldn't have to deal with the toxicity because Kenny Pickett seems to be a pretty, approachable guy, minus the whole thing where he was mad about Mason Rudolph starting. That looked like it was debunked just by the whole interactions that he had on the sidelines with Mason Rudolph and whatnot. I think that's all been nixed. So I don't think Kenny Pickett is that bad of a guy. I personally met the dude, so I don't think he is that bad of a guy. And I think that he probably would be a better option than the other 4 that I have listed. Definitely better than Mac Jones and Desmond Ritter. I mean, in fairness, when you're getting Mac Jones or Desmond Ritter, you're pretty much getting the same player as Kenny Pickett at that point. And at that point, why bring those 2 in? Just leave Kenny Pickett as the starter is what I'm saying. Now, number 3, I know some people are going to disagree with this, but I think Justin Fields would be ranked number 3 at quarterback. Now, I don't think that this guy could ever potentially be the big man, but I definitely think that he has a lot higher of a ceiling than a Kenny Pickett, a Desmond Ritter, or a Mac Jones, and he has a lot more longevity than Russell Wilson and Ryan Tannehill. Now, Justin Fields has been in the NFL for multiple years now. Every year, everybody has said that his breakout year is coming. However, he's always seemed to fall just short of the line. Now, when it comes to his season in Chicago, he had, I believe, what was it? Let me take a look. He had 2,562 yards and 16 touchdowns and 9 interceptions, which is it's like about 10 touchdowns better than Kenny Pickett. He had a couple more interceptions than Kenny Pickett, obviously, but he obviously got that offensive moving, and he doesn't have a lot of offensive weapons to utilize in Chicago right now. And maybe all Justin Fields needs right now is a change of scenery. And with the whole idea of him being traded here, and with the Bears looking to trade him because they have the number 1 overall pick, and would you pass up on Caleb Williams considering he is going to be the next coming of Tom Brady? Probably not. No, as the Chicago Bears, probably would consider him as, not an option next year being Justin Fields. They wouldn't consider him an option when you have the GOAT coming in to the league. So I don't potentially think that Justin Fields is going to be a starter in Chicago, which could mean that they could dump him off to Pittsburgh, leaving Justin Fields to potentially start over Kenny Pickett. Now, like I said, do I think this is a good option? I think it's definitely a possible better option than Kenny Pickett. However, at this point, I feel like he'll be able to move the ball a little bit more. He'll probably be able to throw some more touchdowns. I think that he has a lot more, rushing. I feel like he'll scramble a lot more. I feel like Kenny Pickett's getting a lot more happy feet. He needs to go back to his pit ways, which that's a whole other discussion that's not a part of this video at all. But I think with Justin Fields, he's already a little bit more comfortable than Kenny Pickett is, and I don't think Kenny Pickett has really even gotten comfortable. I mean, maybe we'll see something different in year 3 if he does end up being the starter. But I think Justin Fields would be a better candidate over Kenny Pickett to start. Now, obviously, if Justin Fields poops himself or doesn't do well, you just throw Kenny Pickett back in there, and maybe Kenny Pickett will take you to the promised land shockingly or surprisingly, or pull a better version of Zach Wilson. I don't know, but nonetheless, I think he's probably not a bad move considering, like I said, he's young. He's 24. And I think that he has a little bit higher of a ceiling than Kenny Pickett does right now. I mean, like I said, maybe Kenny Pickett will blow up next year, but personally, I think Justin Fields would be a better option than Kenny Pickett. Number 2, none other than the most unlikely Kirk Cousins. Now, I know what you're all thinking. Kirk Cousins is not coming to Pittsburgh. Well, more than likely he's not. But what if he was the starter? I think we would have maybe 2 or 3 good years as a starting quarterback, as a good team for Cam Hayward, TJ Watt. I think we would have a really good team. I mean, the only thing that's really holding me back from putting him at a potential number 1 spot would be that the number 1 spot just makes a lot more sense. But also, considering Kirk Cousins is probably not leaving Minnesota. And on top of that, I think Kirk Cousins could slow down a little bit with his injury. If he doesn't slow down with his injury, he's just going to go back to his original ways, his evil ways back in Minnesota, and he's going to do really well. And if he was a Pittsburgh Steeler, I really think that he would get the offense moving here. Now, like I said, do I think it's probably going to happen? No, I don't think it's going to happen. I think he's going to go back to Minnesota, and I think Justin Fields is more likelier to happen than Kirk Cousins. But once again, Kirk Cousins is linked to Pittsburgh just like all of these other quarterbacks, and I think Kirk Cousins is a better pick than Justin Fields, Kenny Pickett, Ryan Tannehill, Russell Wilson, Desmond Ritter, and Mac Jones as a starting quarterback. But that's personally just me. I've seen his tape. He's gotten any type of wide receiver going. And like I said, he's had Justin Jefferson. He's had Jordan Addison. He's worked with a lot of wide receivers. And I really think that he could get George Pickens moving and that offense really moving and taking that next step. And I would love to have Kirk Cousins here. Do I think it's likely? Like I said, probably not. But obviously there's still a chance with him being linked here. And I'm putting him at number 2. And I do think he's better than Justin Fields. Like I said, I think Justin Fields, well, obviously, I think he is definitely better than Justin Fields just overall, but I think he'd be a better choice. The only downside with Kirk Cousins is his age, so you would need to have him start, and then you would have to draft a quarterback, or you would have to have somebody like maybe a Justin Fields or somebody that you're willing to develop into your franchise guy by the time that Kirk Cousins is ready to hang it up or leaves the team after 2 years or whatever the case may be. Now, like I said, I don't think this one's going to happen. It's very disappointing to me, but nonetheless, here we are, Kirk Cousins, number 2. Now, nonetheless, number 1, Mason Rudolph. Look, I know a lot of people want some big free agency move. I know people want to trade. I know people want to, take Caleb Williams and trade up and get any one of these possible quarterbacks, and we can, but why not make Mason Rudolph your starter? Out of the 7 guys that I put on the list, he would probably make the most sense at starting quarterback because he already understands the system. He won games for us. He had probably the best offensive showings that we've had for the Pittsburgh Steelers in years. I don't really see why you wouldn't want him as your starting quarterback. I mean, he's already been in the organization, and obviously he has mentioned that he wants a fresh start, but a lot of people, and I'm seeing tweets of this, a lot of people internally within the Pittsburgh Steelers organization really want Mason Rudolph to potentially return. They might just nix the entire, 6 other guys that they could bring in from other teams and just be like, you know what, Mason Rudolph, you're the guy. We're going to give you whatever the heck you want, and you're going to start. Or some of Mike Tomlin and some of those other guys are saying that Kenny Pickett should start over Mason Rudolph because he's the number 1 pick for the Steelers. Well, not number 1, but the first round pick. And honestly, bringing Mason Rudolph back, sign him to a big deal or sign him to a decent deal, sign him to something that will entice him to come back. And he had some really good showings in the last 3 games of the season. I mean, he didn't even have that bad of a showing against the Buffalo Bills in the playoff game. I feel like, under all the circumstances, we've been outscored 60-0 in the last 4 or 5 playoff games that we've had in the first quarter. So this doesn't shock me that we were already down 21-0 at one point. But I think that Mason Rudolph is probably your best option. And if you can sign him, he understands the playbook. And yes, you're going to have a new offensive coordinator, but he's shown what he can do with even a Matt Canada playbook, which, yes, it's different offensive play callings and whatnot. If he can work with Matt Canada's play calls, I think he can work with Arthur Smith's. And I think he has chemistry with these guys. These players love him. And I think the Steelers would be stupid to let him go and possibly get any of these other players. I mean, I think that there's obviously upsides to some of the guys, but I think Mason Rudolph is the guy you want to go with. Out of the 8 connections that we have to Pittsburgh, whether Kenny Picket, already being signed, Mason Rudolph being on the Pittsburgh's organization's connection chart, whatever you want to call it, having him connected already, I think out of these 8 quarterbacks, I think Mason Rudolph's probably your best option. And at that point, yeah, maybe you draft a quarterback in the 2nd or 3rd round. Maybe you see in the 1st round if somebody falls and you don't want to get that offensive tackle that you're looking for or that cornerback that you're looking to get, because I'm seeing people want Kool-Aid McKinstry. I'm seeing offensive linemen getting drafted to be on the opposite side of Broderick Jones. I mean, if you want to draft a quarterback, if somebody falls to you, maybe you do something like that. But honestly, Mason Rudolph, he's not super young, but he's younger than a lot of these guys on this list and has probably the most upside and has just never been given the opportunity to start, really. I mean, I feel like they've always pushed him aside, and they pushed him aside for Mitchell Trubisky, which I think is the dumbest move ever could have done. And now you're here realizing that Mason Rudolph was probably or possibly the answer all along. He just needed some time to develop, and now here we are. I think he's definitely better than Mac Jones. I definitely think he's better than Desmond Ritter, no matter even if they're younger. Russell Wilson, I think, like I said, too old. Ryan Tannehill, too old. I don't want Russell Wilson's contract. I don't want potentially Ryan Tannehill's contract. Kenny Pickett, we already seen Kenny Pickett. Justin Fields, he's young. He's probably the 2nd best option because Kirk Cousins is probably not coming here, but he would be the 2nd best option if he does come here. And I think Mason Rudolph would be your 1st best option. Now, I know most of you are going to disagree with me on this, and that's okay. But if you made it to this point in the video, kudos to you, because I pretty much just ranted about all of these quarterbacks for the last, 20 minutes that I made this video. I really appreciate you watching this video for as long as it was. And I know Josh is going to hate this because he told me to make a 15-minute video. But the problem is the Pittsburgh Steelers are connected to way too many quarterbacks right now. And we don't need to be connected to these many quarterbacks because we're probably only going to sign one, maybe just draft one. Maybe Kenny Pickett will be the starter. I really, from what we're reading, it's looking to be Mason Rudolph from what I've been reading. So all of these 6 other options from outside organizations probably aren't even going to happen. But nonetheless, I still had to rank them based on what all of these quarterbacks potential are and all of their connections to Pittsburgh based on FanDuel and DraftKings and all these reports, because Steelers need a quarterback. I think it's Mason Rudolph or, Justin Fields or Kenny Pickett. Now, like I said, I know somebody's going to be out there mad about Justin Fields or any of these, but let me know what you guys think in the comment section below. I'd love to respond to all your comments. I would love to get all the hate. I would love to get all the love. I don't really care. If you made it this far in the video, please give me, and no buts about it, a like. I'm sure Josh would very much appreciate it. Make sure to subscribe. And like I said, give your comments below based on what you think is going to happen and how much you disagree with my picks or how much you agree with my picks, because, these were a lot of different quarterbacks. But thank you all so much for watching, and I will see you next time I do something like this. Have a great freaking evening, day, morning, whatever it may be. Have a good one.